as Mrs. Justice's boy was, Wyatt had him pegged for the sort who could draw and shoot without so much as a skip in his heartbeat or a catch in his breath. The cattle, more than 500 of them, roiled in the gulch below, like water at the base of a high falls, swirling in on each other in dusty, bawling eddies of hide and horns. "No," Billy said, his tone blithe. Wyatt knew the kid was probably planning to gun him down from behind as soon as they'd delivered the herd and collected the loot. He wasn't afraid of a pockmarked whelp, even a cold-eyed one like Billy, but the charge in the air itself made his nerves claw and scramble under his skin. "Let's get this done," Wyatt answered, and rode in closer to the herd. The wind picked up, howling over the bare Arizona desert like a banshee on the prowl for fresh corpses, but the gang, 6 of them in all, got the critters moving in a southerly direction. Wyatt watched Billy and his 4 riders even more closely than the cattle, making sure none of them had a clear shot at his back. They funneled the herd through a narrow wash, raising dust so dense that Wyatt pulled his bandana up over his nose and mouth and blinked to clear his eyes. He thought about his brother as he rode. Rowdy, a former member of the infamous Yarbro gang, just as he was, had managed to set his feet on the straight and narrow path. He'd changed his ways, gotten himself a pardon, and now he not only had a wife and a new baby, he wore a star on his vest. Despite the brewing storm and his own uneasy feelings, Wyatt grinned wryly behind his bandana. Rowdy, the erstwhile train robber, a lawman. That just proved what he'd always known. Life was unpredictable as hell. Right when a man thought he had it all worked out in his brain, it would twist like a rattler striking from the woodpile. Wyatt had never known any other way of living than holding up trains. Neither had Rowdy, until they pinned a badge on him and made him Marshal of Stone Creek, Arizona. Soon after that, Rowdy had met and married a schoolmarm named Lark Morgan. While he envied Rowdy a little, what would it be like to settle down with a good woman and a community of friends? Wyatt wasn't entirely convinced the change would stick. Once an outlaw, always an outlaw, as Pappy used to say. And Pappy had been in a position to know. Wyatt felt a mingling of irritation and sorrow as he thought of his father. If he'd been standing over the old man's grave at that moment, he wouldn't have known whether to weep or spit on the headstone. He was debating the virtues of one approach over the other when a second bolt of lightning struck, this time in the center of the herd. Eerie light illuminated the whole scene. The terrified cattle and the other men stood out in sharp relief against the darkness for a long, bluish-gold moment. And then all hell broke loose, exploding in every direction like dynamite tossed into a campfire. Wyatt's horse reared, shrieking with panic, and nearly threw him. He caught the scent of scorched flesh. Cattle bellowed in fear, and the other riders scattered, fleeing for their lives. The paint gelding wheeled in the midst of hoof-pounding chaos, and though he fought to stay in the saddle, Wyatt found himself rushing headlong for the ground. The wind knocked out of him by the fall. He lay there in the dirt, blinded by dust, and waited to be trampled to death. Cattle pounded past him, shaking the earth itself. He didn't know where his horse was. He couldn't see anything, but he supposed the poor critter was already dead. If the horns hadn't gotten old Reb, the hooves would have. Wyatt managed to roll onto his belly, raise himself onto his hands and knees. It was a shame he wasn't going to survive the stampede, because it would have made a hell of a story. The cattle continued to rush past him, spilling around some shadowy